I'd like to hear the rest of the song, if we had the time. Hello, welcome. My name is Gary Pica from True Methods. I'd like to start with, hey-o! Hey-o. There we go. Now it feels like a True Methods event. It feels like a cyber call, right? I want to just tell one quick thing, and then we'll get into this, about where I think we are in the industry right now. This feels really similar to going back to like 2008. I had sold my MSP, and one of the first phone calls I made was to Arnie Bellini. I left him a message and said, hey, I'm going to do some training, consulting. Just wanted to let you know. And 3 seconds later, my phone rang. And I don't know if you remember what you said to me, but I picked the phone up and he said, I've been waiting for you. Right? And I flew down and we just talked about where the industry was. Not about starting True Methods or where ConnectWise was, just where the industry was and how it had to change, right? From where it was with break and fix to managed services. We're there again, but it's a bigger, more complex change, right? And that's why we're here today, is to work together to really make sure that all of us navigate that change for ourselves, our businesses, our families, and our customers. So this session will be a good one for us to really learn about what that looks like. So I want everybody to think for a second that you walk into your business one day and something's not right, right? Different team members are coming to you and they're telling you that something's not right, and you start pulling that thread, and then at some point, the reality that some or all of your customers have been breached comes to light. How does that feel?
Never happened.
Right? How's that feel? It'll never happen to me. So we have two people that are going to talk about that moment, in Robert and Eric. And so first off, I want to say, I've talked to at least 20, maybe 30 MSPs that have been through the same thing that you have, that you'll never read about and you'll never see on stage, right? I've seen others that have gotten through it successfully and what they've learned, and I know some that haven't. And the effect that it had on their business, their life, their marriage, is long lasting. So the fact that you guys are so out there and willing to do this on behalf of everyone, I want to thank both of you. It says a lot about, I don't know you as well. We're getting to know each other, but I know you, and it speaks to who you both are.
Bar's right around the corner.
There we go. Okay, so here's what I want to start with, and Robert, I'll start with you.
Sure.
Just the beginning of what I just described, when you're realizing that piece of how it unfolded,
yeah,
and that moment when you realized the scope of it, and I want everyone to understand how you felt.
Oh boy. Do we have to?
We have to.
I'm really honored and glad to be here to share the story, because there's a very big emotional component that when you go through something like this overwhelms you. So all your technical knowledge and all your understanding about bits and bytes and what buttons to push, they all go out the window. So let me rewind it a bit. We were a victim of what we call in our company the July 2K incident. So July 2nd, 2021 at 10:49 a.m. Some Russian hacker group infiltrated our RMM tool and deployed ransomware to 100% of our endpoints. So about 2,500 endpoints, which includes about 250 servers. When I say 100%, I mean, other than a few machines that might have been off, we had 100%. We were affected 100%. So I was sitting in my kitchen joking around with one of my engineers, actually my tools administrator, the guy who runs our RMM tool, and my director of ops walks up the flight of steps to our second floor where I'm sitting, and I got a clear line of sight, because I'm Italian, you never put your back to the door when you're eating. By the way, S-bomb, I thought that was F-bomb, so you might hear a couple. I'm like, what the hell? Why is everybody saying S? It's an F. You're from Philly, right? Yeah. Jay walks up the flight of steps, and he's walking down the hall, and he's got this pale look on his face. And it was a beautiful sunny day in New York. It was just great weather. We're just so happy that the weather was so good. And my instant thought was, oh shit, like somebody died. Like really, that is exactly what went through some of my head. One of my engineers just got into a car accident, got crushed by a truck, or something really bad happened. And so I stood up and I approached Jay at the threshold of the kitchen, and I'm like, what's going on? And he couldn't speak. He was emotionally a wreck. And he just started kind of babbling things like, every one of our customers is calling, everyone is ransomware. I'm like, come on, like which one? And he goes, no, all of them. And he just started rattling off names like incoherently. And that's when it hit me. I mean, that's when the sunny day kind of turned into a dark cloud came in. And I'm a fighter. I don't want to say I grew up on the streets, but I kind of grew up in it was a pretty good area, but there's some rough spots, and I've had my run-ins with some rough areas of the neighborhood I grew up in. But like I never backed down from a fight, and I'm a fixer. I mean, that's why I got into this business, right? Most of you started your company. Why? Because you knew how to put a computer system together, and this is what we do. It's in our blood. So whenever there's a problem, and now as a facilitator for Evolve, facilitating 2 groups, I help people fix their business problems too. So everything in life for me is an issue or a problem that people come to me with, and I know how to fix it. Well, let me tell you something. I was staring down a deep, deep chasm, an abyss, an endless hole, and I felt myself getting like pulled into it. Kind of like one of those Hitchcock movies where you're just like, like Vertigo, like where you're just like kind of getting pulled into this thing uncontrollably, and I didn't know what to do.
Did you, like a physical response?
Yeah. I mean, I stopped breathing. I probably went as pale as Jay was. He's Filipino, I'm Italian, so a little dark complexion, and I think we both turned ghostly white. And I said, I just grabbed him by the shoulder and I pulled him into my office and I closed the door because I didn't know what else to do. Like, I mean, pure instinct and adrenaline had kicked in. And it took us some time, and I'm sure you have other questions here, but that was the initial shock of just, you see these movies where, and I tell people like, don't get afflicted by the Hollywood syndrome, but those Hollywood movies, like those war movies where like a bomb goes off and there's a ringing in your ears and like
slow motion. The
slow motion, the bullets fly, like you can see the bullet like kind of flying over your head. That is exactly how I felt, and it was scary as hell.
Awesome. I mean, not awesome. But an awesome way to describe it, and heartfelt.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Same question.
Well, we were one of the first major MSPs that had a security incident. So ours was actually 3 years ago, last Friday. And
happy anniversary.
Thank you. Still standing. By the way, who's business owners in here, real quick? So I'm going to apologize to everyone of the business owners. You're probably not going to sleep well for a couple nights. Is usually the feedback I get from these sessions. But I was homesick. I was actually on a sales call. I started getting SOS texts from my office that we had been hit with ransomware. So I'm driving into my office about 10 minutes away, and my phone starts lighting up from customers saying, hey, I've got hit by ransomware. So I, thank goodness, had Chris Lair on speed dial, called him, and we kind of started talking through like, wow, what could this be? By the time I got into the office, the phones, we were about 50 calls per minute. We kind of had to, everyone's looking at me, it's dead silent in there, and just looked and said, what are we going to do? And we said, well, I guess we really have 2 options at this point. We can turn tail and run, or we can fight. And it was a unanimous across my team. We're here to fight. We care for these clients. We want to make right, and we don't want to let these attackers win. A little context, we're about 3 million, 15 people. My staff went to a 100-hour a week for 2 months. I have tons of terrible statistics I can share with what happened, but yeah, 1,700 endpoints were hit. We were in between the PSA and the RMM vulnerability. Our RMM very successfully deployed this tool and encrypted 75 million files in just a few hours. So yeah, it's that shock syndrome. Like, there are bits and pieces I remember, slow motion, what's next. It was, still talking about it today is akin to, pardon my French, kicking yourself in the balls. Like, it still sucks to talk about, but we've got a lot of good feedback that it's helped others, and so that's why we continue to do this, and this isn't our first rodeo. So.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about what happens next, but if I could ask everybody just for 1 minute to close your eyes for a minute and try to think about how you would feel at that same moment that these two guys just experienced. Yeah. Man, I'm sorry, right? I'm sorry.
Was it
about
you?
that.
I'm still looking for the guy. Wes gave me some pictures. I told you I'm a fighter.
I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
All right, so I want to talk about preparation and then response. Yeah. So did you have an IR plan? Did your customers?
I can't spell IR. I don't know. No, I didn't.
So, yeah. So how prepared did you think you were or not at that time? And then beyond that, what's the first thing you did? Take me through the first, hour to 12 hours.
I'll go first. So we had been doing things internally to button up our security. I thought we were doing some pretty good things, but certainly, coming here makes me realize how much I'm not doing. And joining like the cyber call and getting more and more involved in security. I think a lot of MSPs will say that they do cybersecurity. They do it for their customers, maybe. We have a saying in Italian.
I asked their prices. They're not doing it.
No. But the shoemaker has no shoes very often, right? So, but we had taken inventory internally, probably not as methodically and deeply as we should have, but we did some things. And so initially, I was wondering, like, how did this happen? I thought I had things pretty buttoned up. And I want to say, for the most part, not to deprecate and self-deprecate so much here, but we did a pretty good job of making sure our systems were secure. So there was a lot of bewilderment, a lot of questions, a lot of kind of like frantic, like, oh shit, what do we do? We don't even, so you asked about IR plans. Like, we had no idea what to do. And here's the silly part. We had just gone through about a 4-month process of evaluating our cyber liability insurance policy. So yes, we have one and had one. That went into effect on Monday, June 28th.
Wow.
4 days prior to the attack. And so here we were in that prior 3-4 months leading up to that policy actually getting signed off, and it's now in effect, to going through understanding what a cyber liability insurance policy covers and what it offers and why you need one and blah, 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 blah. All the stuff that probably bounces off your brain and that you don't really retain. Because I didn't retain it, because when we got hit, do you think the first call that I made was to my cyber liability insurance? No, I dithered and kind of floundered for about an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe, making other phone calls, not realizing that was probably the very first thing I should do.
Yeah.
So that's not an incident response plan, not by far, but I was making some really basic mistakes.
Yeah, and so what were you doing during that first hour and a half before that call? Like, what was your initial reaction without a plan to go to and look at, to execute on? What did your logic tell you?
Yeah, so I'm the lion in the office, right? Like, I'm the aggressive one out of my team. I got, if you follow, like, Make a Difference, I got a lot of camels working for me. I got some monkeys. I'm the driver, right? And I didn't know what to do. So here I was in my office with Jay, and I had my head in my hands, and I was speechless. And he picked up on that. He's got his EQ is like way off the scale, and he put his hand on my shoulder because he knew that I was crumbling, and he said, "Come on, we got this, right?" And I'm sorry, it's like reliving some of this stuff like starts to pull out some of the emotions. So I got to slow down a little bit. I'm going New York minute. So I took a deep breath, and what Jay was saying in unspoken words to me was that we have an awesome team. We have a great culture. It's what we work so hard to build. And that right there, at that moment, that instant was the reason why we work so hard, making sure that we have the right people on the bus, in the right seats, because that is when you need them. That is when the shit hit the fan. That's when the roof blew off the building, and we really needed to pull it together. I needed him to remind me that this wasn't just a thing for Robert to step up and fix. It was way bigger than me. It was way bigger than us, but we were going to start with us. So that was some of the initial stuff. I mean, there's a lot of like little spin-off and spider stories here.
Yeah, and then once you made the call to your insurance company, did they help get a team involved? Like, did you get?
We got assigned a breach coach,
Okay.
which is essentially an attorney. They assigned a forensics company, which I'll say kind of was useless in this particular case because it was the nature of the smash and grab. And other vendor like Huntress really stepped up and dissected the whole thing before anybody else could. We had a negotiator who said that they already knew what to do to make contact with the SOBs. That's kind of like the S-bomb thing. And they were ready to start negotiations, but we never went down that path. The breach coach, how many people here have attorneys as clients? How much do you love them? Yeah, the hands went down, mostly. I'm sorry if anybody here is an attorney, but you're not well liked. Tough shit. But now let me prop you back up, because the breach coach that we were assigned, lawyers, right? Which I initially was feeling like, I don't want to effing talk to these people. I want to go in and fix stuff. I want to talk to my customers. I want to assure them that you are like my children.
Yeah,
and
everything you're not supposed to do.
Yeah, everything you're not supposed to do. But let me tell you something. The breach coach that was assigned to us through our insurance policy was phenomenal. And I am now paying them for work that's not covered by my policy to help me through some other stuff. But they were the right counsel that I needed at that moment, even though I didn't like some of the things they were telling me.
Because it's not intuitive.
No, totally unintuitive, right? Especially for a techno geek, right?
Yeah, what you want to do is get your clients up and running, and that's not the priority, right? That's the end result.
Yes.
But initially,
Let the flames keep burning.
It is not the. It's not, and that's why if you
very
again
unnatural.
without a plan or a coach,
Yeah.
you're gonna do the wrong.
But
thing,
that was
right?
like, I would say, if this ever happens to you, just please keep that one point in mind. Key takeaway for you is make that phone call and get that counsel on your side, because you're not going to know what the hell you're doing. Trust me. You think you might, you're not. I'm 100% guaranteed. Not 99%, 100% guaranteed you are not going to know what to do.
And in the best case scenario, you've made a contact and you have that relationship and you've had those discussions prior.
Yeah.
Right? So same type thing, like the first hour to 12 hours.
Sure.
When you're trying to formulate your plan.
So a little backstory to that. We were a little ahead of the curve, and I don't mean that in a boastful way, with security. We had next-gen AV 100% deployed. We had SIMSOC. We had a loaded firewall. We had 2FA. We had, you name it. We had our ducks in a row. And so, another key takeaway, it's not if, it's when. Like, you really need to plan that way. So our ducks were in a row. It happened. I did call my insurance. Now, I had the most amazing...
They're all left of boom ducks, right? Just so they're the left of boom ducks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. But I actually had 2 cyber insurance policies. They overlapped for 4 days, and that's when we got hit. So talk about good fortune. And I actually ended up using both of those policies. We also got great counsel. That was a huge help. I've never thought anyone was worth $600 an hour, but now that's the only type of people we'll use, because in 5 sentences they know the whole story, where a less experienced attorney, you'll spend 4 hours educating them on what an MSP is, right? So when this happened, so our story has 2 parts. The first part, we got hit with ransomware. So what do we do when we get hit with ransomware? We go to backups. Well, I had a backup provider that did not come up to the table. They could not produce any backups. So yeah, I'd love to say their name, but I won't. Anyways, I called them up and I'm like, hey, I need you to spin up 200 to 300 servers. And they're like, what? We can spin up maybe a dozen. And then they spin up 5 servers for us. They are totally unusable. I said, you know what? Just give us our data on bare metal drives, So this vendor is a major vendor. They're about 10 miles down the road. It took them 5 days to get us our first server backup. 5 days, okay? So on day 1,
For those of you that aren't technical, that's bad.
Yeah, that's really bad. So all these clients that have been paying for hourly backups and nightly offsites, we're all like, what the hell's going on here? So their system was designed to only produce 1 terabyte of data out of it in a 24-hour period. So it took them 5 days to get their ducks in a row to give me my first terabyte, and we had 88 terabytes in their cloud. And as Gary would say, we had a math problem. Day 1, I went straight to the piggy bank, cracked it open, and paid almost $100,000 to the attackers to get decryption keys, right? Because once I found out that our backup provider completely failed us. Okay, so our backup provider didn't have a DR plan. So I was dealing with a lot more logistics.
So you were lucky it was 3 years ago.
Yeah, because that was $100,000.
Because it was $100,000 before they figured out
it was
the value of MSPs.
3.8 million, and then the negotiations got down to 80-ish, and then there's a $10,000 Bitcoin service fee. So we went right to tactical once we realized we couldn't back up, and then the attackers didn't get us our keys until Saturday. So this happened Monday at 9:43. Saturday at 10:30 at night is when we got the decryptions. Each computer had a serial number, and we had to match the decryptor with the serial number. Now, we knew this ahead of time. We wrote a program to do that so we could kick it off. Another math problem, we encrypted 75 million files in a few hours, and the decryptors could only decrypt about 1,000 files per hour. Oh, man. So another huge math problem. So then we had to write the script to run multiple decryptors at the same time until we crashed the computer, then we'd have to scale back down. And we were a 24/7 shop for 2 months. It was, we just went into head down. We brought in, community, we brought in techs from other organizations. We brought in some people from Alabama, Texas, and staffed up to do the recovery.
All right, so one question I have, you had policies, you're paying out, you're paying to get, you got to roll. And I'm assuming, with your policies, you're going to get reimbursed later, right?
Hope so.
So, but I'm saying in the short term, part of this is, do I have cash in bank? Do I have a line of credit?
Right.
Because if you don't have $100,000, you can't pay $100,000.
Yep.
That's the way that works, right? So that's something you think about. It's not just technical, but this is financial, right? That there is a buffer that you need to be able to make sure now that that's not another, you've named 4 or 5 issues. Now there's another issue, on top of that of stress. If you don't, if you got $50,000 in your bank and you don't have a line of credit, you got a problem.
The answer is simple, but the execution could be impossible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Really good. I'm sure people are taking notes. Those couple math problems aren't, they're not things you think about. Restoring a client is different than restoring every client.
Absolutely.
It's a completely different process.
One little note, our systems were down too.
Yeah.
We didn't have our RMM, we didn't have our PSA. And so we were a lot of flying blind, trying to get our own stuff back to recovery.
So the next question I have is around communication, team communication, how do you mobilize your team, and then customer communication. What did you say? How did you communicate it? What did you not say? So team and customer communication.
There's a different component that you left out, but I'll get to that.
Yeah.
So with team, I mean, it was just a matter of a couple of things initially was I just felt like we needed to all physically get in one space. And I felt like I needed to give them, sort of a kind of a pep talk. Like,
But
hey,
did you have to tell them what they could and couldn't say and who they could and couldn't say?
over time, right? So
Yeah.
initially, like within the first, let's say, couple of hours, I didn't really know, right, exactly what to say. That's where Breach Coach comes in. They're excellent at that because here I am throwing around the term like breach this, breach that.
Yeah,
I think
no, not
Jennifer
a
said
breach.
before, like
The B word.
That's the B word. Don't
Yeah.
use the B word. It's not what you think. It's the other B word, breach. Sounds like the other B word, but and it is the other B word, but. So over time, we had to really coach people to do that, and then correct people, especially when we were getting messages from customers about, and I would retort back like, this was an incident, we were under attack. I mean, it sounded like a little bit of legalese posturing, but it was important to maintain consistency in communication, and I had to remind everybody, you can listen to people bitch, there's the other word, on the phone at you, but if it starts to escalate or they're talking lawsuit or they're talking things that are beyond you fixing their issue, just pass it to me and I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
Right? And we try to really consolidate that communication. My business partner,
Like being coached by your breach coach.
yeah,
right?
on those things
Yeah.
to say. And then I would also prepare, because I'm the writer in the company, so I would prepare statements written based upon breach coach input and then pass that off to my partner and our sales director, who are then reaching out and communicating with our clients on as consistent basis as possible.
Yeah.
But the piece that you left out is communicating with your loved ones. And there's a whole story behind that one too, which has a little bit, I know Wes really loves that story. Maybe we'll squeeze it in, I don't know. But you need to tell your family what's going on. They need to be clear about what's going on, and that's kind of where I F-bombed up a little bit with my wife, because I didn't really quite explain to her exactly what was happening, and it set her off on a little bit of a course of action because I did not communicate clearly. Who here, which men only, which men here are married? Yeah, and you communicate perfectly with your wife every time, don't you? Yes, I'm there, right? No, I'm not there. So it's really, it was an important business, even though it was a personal thing, it was an important business lesson in this case, to be very clear in your communications, especially when you're under that pressure of, I gotta get off the phone because I got like 1,000 other phone calls to answer.
Yep. Eric, communication.
So my attorney brought in I didn't even know there's such thing, crisis communication company.
Yeah, there is.
And one thing I loved about that, she just said, I'll get this approved, go, and brought it in, and they helped make the statements. And so we had a few different paragraphs based on what people asked. And that was super helpful to give to the staff. We didn't have that for the first few hours. So, kind of a lesson learned there. We did have an IR plan, but it was for if we got hit, we never considered everyone being hit. We had tested backups. We had all green check boxes. All the backups were marked green. We never considered testing at scale. So again, kind of a takeaway, you got to test at scale, and the IR plan can't just be for you. So we had the basics, but not the full thing.
You mentioned Chris Laird, and if you've heard him on the cyber call, the two things that always come up, right, when he's involved in breaches, the two biggest mistakes are communicating the wrong thing to the wrong people, creating a bigger problem for yourself, and destroying evidence, right? Using logic on what you should be doing. And you mentioned, you both mentioned both of them.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about lessons learned. I want to talk about after the fact. Both you as a person, but your business, what's different about the way you approach and how you communicate with customers and prospects now about security? Well, first I want to say, obviously your business survived, and I know you both kept most of all of your customers, correct?
We lost
For the
about
most
10%.
part.
We had more loss than that,
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah.
Okay. But You kept the majority.
We kept the good ones.
Yeah, you kept the good ones.
Well, and you can laugh, and I'm laughing there with
It's
you.
one way to find out who your good customers are. Maybe not the best way.
We kept the ones that had a compatible value system, right? We lost some big ones that did not truly value what we were doing for them, right? Or were that we were just never able to fully engage in a relationship with them. One in which was built purely, I often say this, like, what do we sell, right? We're not selling IT, we're not selling security. Gary, Eric, we sell trust and confidence, right? And so those ones that had the trust and confidence in us, although it was tested quite severely during this entire incident, it's almost kind of like, you know who your friends are when the chips are down, and you kind of really know who your true clients are when something like this happens, because we got the benefit of the doubt from a lot of people, but other people, literally first words out of their mouth was, "I'm going to sue you," right? You just destroyed my business, right? Like I did something personally or intentionally. But I'll say this too, kind of a lesson learned. We were scared to sell cybersecurity. Because it's sticky and it's messy and it's hard to convince people that you got to do this. Man, talk about growing up overnight. Like now we're like, you're going to have this and you're going to pay for it and it's got a hefty price. And if you don't, within about a year, then we're going to separate because we're not going to take on you. You are now indicating to me that you don't value your business enough and that you're not engaging in the proper risk management to protect yourselves, and we're telling you this is what you need to do. So, we've completely gone the other direction now, where it's like this is, and when we sell, it's like included. Yeah. Like we don't need, it's like here's your number.
Can you write that down, everybody?
Yeah. We don't. It's a non-negotiable. I mean, right now it's a little negotiable with some accounts because we're trying to shepherd them along there, but we're taking a much more confident approach with that. And so I think that's the key word I'm trying to hone in on is. It gave us, I always try to look at, and Eric and I have talked about this, like, yeah, it really sucks what happened to us. Yeah, my financial loss, hard cost, 900 grand and growing. That's a lot of beans. So that's a lot of S-bomb beams. It gave us the confidence to say, like, we're not going to accept that you're not going to take security seriously.
Yep.
For us, we, back at this time again, we felt that we were a little ahead of the curve, but it was still very much a la carte. Remember the break fix days? Do you want antivirus or not? So it was kind of a la carte. We had this wall, and it's like, hey, how high do you want to build the wall? Here's a bunch of products, and now it's just packages, right? Here's this much risk you're assuming. Here's this is, you're transferring some of that risk, and so on. The other thing is it's all based on frameworks. It's not what I'm a CISSP, which means nothing. It's not based on what Eric thinks is great or what product I get the best margins from. It's all based upon a framework, right? So our package is based upon a framework, and if you don't think that's, you don't like that we have no more local admins, well, 800 security professionals agree this is the way it should be done. So this is the way we're going to go.
So the big lesson here is if your customers, two lessons. One, that relationship that you need to have, like that business relationship and how you're valued, needs to be in place before a breach. It's not going to happen at or after a breach, number one. Number two, if your customers aren't taking almost all of your recommendations around security, it's the number one question that I get. Well, I hear what you're saying, Gary, but my customers don't want this. My customers don't. It's not your customer's fault. It's your fault. Because if they understood this, they wouldn't care whether you charged them $3,000 or $5,000. They wouldn't care. If you sat in front of them and told a story and told them, I want you to close your eyes for a minute, and I want you to think that you just got breached because no matter what I or anybody else do, that day will probably come. Do you care whether I charge you $3,000 or $4,000, man? Are you with me? Yeah. what does Wes always say, right? The best way to go and get the right budget from your customer or stakeholder is to have a breach. We're hoping coming here is the second best way, right? To learn it without having to go through everything that you all went through. Ryan Weeks is not in the room today, but he's here in spirit. So I'm going to ask this question for him. How important is asset inventory?
Do you mean before or after?
Yes.
Yeah, I figured you would say that. It's critical because, well, I mean, doing the asset inventory is probably the thing that got us in trouble in our particular case because it's what, they used our RMM tool.
Yep.
As with you. Yeah, we were flying completely blind. We had no RMM tool, had no plans on bringing that particular one back online, and wondering how the hell are we going to do this? How do we properly manage all of these systems? So here I am, and by the way, I had tremendous help from the Evolve community, amazing friends that I've had so long that showed up at my doorstep.
Are you in a peer group?
Yeah,
we're
same
both
thing.
in Evolve.
Okay.
Yeah, and we didn't know each other then. And so, some of the bright things that come out of this is I met Eric. I probably would have never met him, so now I consider him a friend.
But I don't want to cut you off,
yeah.
but would you say based on this, because we've had this in our peer community, same type of thing, would you say just on these kind of things alone, everyone should be part of a peer community?
Absolutely. If you are not,
How many people here are business owners that are not in an industry peer? Yeah.
get to a peer group.
You need to get to a peer group.
So during
It could be true methods or a lesser one. I'm sorry, I had to. Keep going.
There's a curtain over here. We're going to go talk behind this curtain in a bit. I'm just messing with you. You probably kicked my butt. Anyway, so having that tool and the lack of a tool in that instance was very hurtful to us. I mean, it was such an impediment because I was sending guys out, to all corners of our customers, and this is more about the IR plan, like really with some rough sketch checklist of what to do. And I would have loved to have on that checklist, install this agent, so we've got some visibility there.
Yeah.
We had reached out to a wonderful provider known as ConnectWise. Anybody hear of them? And they helped us get on an RMM tool. And if anyone's ever made a switch, with your PSA RMM, even under the best conditions, it's a 6-month, gut-wrenching experience. Try doing that in the middle of an attack. We're still, honestly, cleaning up from that. We still don't have all proper deployment. So it's now impacted our business negatively because we're highly inefficient still.
Right.
We're still, this happened 3 years ago. I was still involved in one case. We settled last month. So,
I wanted to ask about competitors in your marketplace. Did they know? Did they leverage it, or did they help you?
So mine knew. There's a couple that went out, and for the geeks in the room, they ran NetStat, and they're like, see all these things that are running. That's all the stuff Protect left in there that you're still hacked. So that was one of my less reputable competitors. And then I had competitors on the other scale that showed up with a trunk full of servers because they knew that all of our BDRs were toast, right? So it does bring out the best and the worst. So again, we got hit before it was cool to get hit. I was attacked on Twitter, on LinkedIn. My staff was attacked. Every unemployed IT person out there told me how if I had good backups, we could have recovered. Our competitors are saying, oh, if you were with us, that never would have happened. We're bulletproof. So yeah, it pulls out the best and the worst. Some of my best clients became my foes, and some of the worst clients became my best. They're like, we're rooting for you. We're bringing you pizza. So yeah, it definitely brings out a whole different dynamic of people and competitors and clients.
Our help was mostly from around the country. Being in New York, we had help from California, Texas, Iowa, Florida, Kansas, Massachusetts. I'm probably missing a couple of states. But we did also have some local competitors that showed up at our door that we were somewhat friendly with. I mean, you know, in my market, we're like pizzerias or cockroaches. We're everywhere, MSPs. You shake a stick down one block in New York City, and there's 100 of us. So, so I don't think anybody really caught wind of what happened. Maybe months later, you know, news kind of got out a little bit, but I didn't really experience at least the negative aspects. So I think that's where I feel fortunate.
Hopefully
have
it's
that.
different today, right? Than then. Hopefully we're a different kind of community, and that we would all react in that way. That if something happened to one of our competitors, that we would be there for them.
To Wes's point, I think we have evolved a lot as a community in 3 years. When this happened, most of my vendors like, shh, this didn't happen. Let's just keep this low. This is probably your fault. Let's just shh. And now they actually come out and say, okay, you know, they're much more transparent. So I think that's a huge move in the right direction.
Are you a better MSP today?
Better? It's certainly different. I'd like to say better for it. I probably would have looked at this conference and went, I just got back from Evolve, a whole week of facilitation. I'm on a cruise in 2 weeks. It's a lot of time out. Probably not. Probably would have skipped it, right? Maybe I could read a book.
Right.
So in that regard, like, we're amping up a lot of our efforts internally that I hope in the end that turns us into a better MSP. Change doesn't happen that quickly, right? You know, we went through that rough period of recovery over the summer into September, maybe even into October. We were still taking care of some fires. And only in like this last quarter have we started to re-engineer ourselves. But this is like turning a battleship, right? You don't just pivot, you know, not when you're a you know, $5 million organization. You just don't turn things around that quickly.
Are you a better business person today?
For me?
Yeah. Because of this.
I'd like to say yes. I mean, I've had a very negative experience, and I've had a lot of compliments from my own team members, including my entire leadership team, about, you know, some of my really strong qualities, how they came out to really assist. I needed to turn into Patton, right? General Patton. That's what our company needed, and I did. You know, I know Wes is running for dictator, but at least in my company, I was dictator for the summer. So I have some experience if you need some help, you know. I'll be your consigliere in that regard. So yeah, I mean, I'd like to say yes, humbly, that I have some battle scars that I can bring to the table. And I'm just trying to share the story with everyone here. You know, I found a kindred spirit in Eric. I mean, somebody introduced us knowing what happened, and we instantly just like, I don't want to say unloaded on each other, but we certainly like were very transparent with each other. And I think I take those conversations and experiences and try to become a better leader in my company, a better individual, a better community member, a better business leader in my local market as well.
Yeah. What about you? Better business person? Better MSP?
So my team went through hell and back with us. No one quit. Everyone worked through it. We had marketing people, controller, everyone was decrypting. We didn't do a project, we didn't touch anything for 8 months. And, you know, a few people have left since then. We have some new people, and the new people are like, man, how am I gonna break into this? Like, you guys are just this tight unit, right? So our team was awesome. Even Chris Layers, you know, he was like, man, I wish these other cases we worked on were like yours. You guys, I didn't have to deal with like owners not talking to each other, or this tech wanting to run rogue, or everyone trying to cover their own tail, whatever. And so we had that strong team. And to Robert's point, you got to start that now, right? You can't start that the day an incident happens. So I think we're stronger and better because of it. Business leader, you know, I've taken a lot of coaching from Gary Pica. I told him, he doesn't even know this, hundreds of hours listening to him and Bob on the car.
Sounds awesome.
You know, I'm fortunate to have Arlen Sorensen in our Evolve group, and just be able to be mentored from them. To Gary's point, we don't charge enough. Yeah. Like, when you go through something like this and you look back like, man, is this thing worth it? if there's not some financial reward for you and your team, like it's not worth it, man. Let's just go. If you're at, flat, no profits, go open up a Little Caesars, right? Like we do not charge enough. I compete against people in my local market that I'm 2x, 3x, and quote, they have the same security in place. And so, yeah, we got to charge more, and it's a process. Evolving every day as a leader. Still got a long ways to go, but yes, this definitely, put a couple notches in the belt and some arrows in the back.
So I want to take some questions, now, Wes. But I want to say, if you listen to the cyber call, they talk about almost every week things that you're not doing that you should be doing. And I'm a broken record. Who's going to do them, and how are we going to get paid to do them? Because if we don't have all of this process built, and if it's not being done for every client, and it's not someone's role who's accountable. So if you're in this room right now, and every one of your engineers has a ticket, if you don't have people in your business that don't do projects, don't bill, and don't get assigned tickets, you and your customers are probably not secure. That's the reality of it. And that's why it's expensive. And because your competitors at half the price, they're talking about they have the same stack. Yeah. So that you're secure. And almost everything that's expensive, why you're charging double, is outside of that stack. It's the hard work that Wes and John talked about this morning.
Security is a process. It's not a product or a project. I think that's a misconception of a lot of young MSPs.
Yep. We have some questions?
Robert,
Yo.
You have not told the most New York story yet.
I forgot to ask.
You must tell the duffel bag story. Get ready, guys. This is
Pretty good.
great.
I'm gonna have to. Well, first, here's the prop. Wes, come on, man. You got to get your eyes on this.
There it is.
It's the $100
There it
bill.
is.
I'm going to tell the story a little different today. There were several thousand of these in my house on the night of July 2nd. And so I'll tell you a story which, I don't know, it's a little funny. I mean, Wes is very amused by it. I didn't think it was that funny. But there's also some important business lessons here. So, boom, attack happens. I'm in the middle of the firefight. The whole vision of everything in slow motion, bullets, blood, limbs flying everywhere. About an hour and change in, I go, oh shit, I gotta tell my wife I will not see her on the boat trip that we were taking that weekend, at the 3 barbecues we were supposed to attend, and all the revelry and drinking that I was supposed to be doing that weekend. Maybe I did a little drinking, but no, actually I didn't. So I called her. And the thing you need to understand about me is that I'm really big into sort of the former HTG, now evolved like mindset of the 4 plans and life plans. And I really, my wife is very supportive of me disappearing for a week every quarter. She knows I work hard on the business. I talk to her about business valuation, and there's a reason I'm setting all this up. So I called her and I said, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm home. And I'm like, okay, I have 30 seconds, literally 30 seconds. I'm gonna tell you some quick things, and then I gotta hang up. And she knew something was wrong. So she's like, what's wrong? And I said, my business was just attacked, right? We were hacked, and all of my systems here are ransomwared, and all of my customer systems are ransomware. My business value just went to 0. And so I said business value went to 0 because when we meet quarterly, she and I to do life planning, part of that is like where we are financially. So I said this to her to kind of more as a way to put some gravity to the conversation. I said, look, I don't know when I'm going to be home. Do not call me unless somebody is dead. And I mean those words literally. Are you good? And she's like, not really.
Did you, based on that, did you actually think she was going to say, yeah, I'm good?
Quite frankly, well, remember that whole comment about, hey, any married guys here?
Yeah.
Like, you know, because this is the
I
stupid.
think Patton might have done a better job with that call.
I should have slapped her with the glove. No, I don't, she's not listening, is she? So I said to her, you know, look, like literally, like, don't call me unless somebody is dead. You know, are you good? And she's like, no. And I'm like, all right, well, look, I gotta go. I don't know when I'm gonna be home. I gotta go. Like, goodbye, right? So I hung up. So then I think I called her about 8 o'clock that night, where I had a moment to breathe. And, oh, by the way, I also told her, shut off all the computers. This is an important part. I missed this, right? I said, please shut off all the computers in the house. Because, of course, what RMM agent was on all my PCs in the house, right? You got it. I said, please shut them all off. And she has her PhD in biochemistry, by the way, so she's way smarter than me. So instead of shutting off all the computers in the house, what does she do? She yanked the internet cable, because she's smarter than me. And then she proceeded to turn off all the computers. And then she proceeded to do something else that I did not expect her to do. And here's the lesson in communications and clarity. And I could have taken another 30 seconds to explain more clearly, but Patton was on a roll. So the other thing that she did that afternoon that was unbeknownst to me is after she followed my instructions, she called our local bank and said, can you please tell me my balance? Because she's looking on her smartphone what the balance is. Because what is she thinking? Robert's business just went valuation to 0. They've been attacked. They've been hacked. What is she thinking, right? Dumbass over here didn't explain to her that they didn't break into our bank. She's thinking they broke into our bank accounts and sucked all the money out of my company, right? So she's thinking, that's why he said to shut off all the computers in the house. She calls the bank and verifies the bank balance. And listen, it's a number. It just happens to be some random number. You know, we've got money in a lot of different places, but cash in bank was about 65 grand. Is my money there? Yep. Okay, she's like, I'll see you in a few minutes. She runs down the hill, races down the hill in the car. I want all my money. We don't have it. She's like, what do you mean we don't have it?
You're the bank.
You're the bank. There's a big fucking metal door over here that I want to go in there, and I know there's money, and we don't have the cash. She goes, okay, start calling other banks. 4 banks later that they called, right? And she's pacing. At least this is what she's telling me. They say, okay, so I live in a little village called Ardsley. It's near Yonkers, if anybody knows geographically Westchester County. On the other side of the county, and if you live in Westchester County, you know going north and south is pretty easy. Going east and west is a pain in the ass. So Mamaroneck is on the other side of the county. Ma'am, Mamaroneck branch has the cash. She's like, great, tell them to put it aside and hold it. I'll be there in 20 minutes. It's a 30-minute ride, by the way. She made it in 20. Because she's freaking out, right? And so she drives over there, and she says, okay, like, I'm that crazy lady, like, sort of. She didn't say that, but, you know, I want all my money. And they were like, okay, do you have a bag? Because $65,000 in cash actually kind of stacks up pretty high.
Didn't they have burlap bags with a dollar sign on it?
Yeah. So she's like, all right, hold on one second. So she races outside, and if you went to the vendor pavilion, you got those like recycle bags that everybody uses for shopping, right? You know, she's got a car full of them because, you know, she does all the shopping for us. And she comes back inside with one of these silly bags. It probably has like some supermarket logo on it. And she's stuffing stacks of hundreds into the bag, and they made her sign a form to say, once you step out the bank, it's, you know, we're not liable for this. And, you know, and then she races back home. I mean, Wes added in the colors, like, it sounds like Sopranos, like, you know, New York Italian over here. My wife's half Sicilian, right? It was like a scene right out of friggin', it's like Carmelis's soprano going to the bank to yank it.
So what does 65K look like in a
Well,
bag?
you know, that's the funny thing. I don't know. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when I came home that night, one of the first things I did was go into the bedroom to put, like, you know, to unload all the, you know, my cell phone, my wallet, my keys. It's just sort of a habit that I do. And I'm walking back out and got a dresser with all my clothes, all my summer clothes, and there's the trunk with all my winter clothes that I alternate, right? Because I just don't have enough room for everything. And I noticed that the trunk has a lock on it. So, you know, as I'm explaining to my wife in the living room that night about what, you know, what was going on, because of course, like, and my older daughter was home from college.
Did she say,
too.
oh, by the way?
Yeah, it was like, oh, by the way. And no, I said, oh, by the way, like, where's the money? You know, because at 8 o'clock at night when I was still in the office, she had told me what happened.
Yeah.
Now it's 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, so where's the money? And I was like, is there some, like, it's all in the trunk? She's like, there's some there. And I was like, where the hell is the rest of it? She's like, well, it's here and there. I spread it out. She had the wherewithal to kind of, like, spread it out a little bit. So I tell her, like, okay, you didn't need to do this, and I'm sorry. I'm the jackass for not explaining correctly. It's not your fault. She's like, you gave me a heart attack. I went and did all of this. I embarrassed myself in front of all these bank people. I'm like, no, you gave
We
them
should
an
have had
awesome
her
story. Yeah, totally. She's way better. She's way, like I said, she's smarter than me. But she, so I said to her, all right, well, you got to go put it back. She's like, all right, so tomorrow morning I'll go to the bank and I'll deposit. I'm like, no. The last thing I need now is the IRS on my ass. I already have the FBI on the phone like the whole day. So that's, you know, sort of the silly little story. But the moral of that story is being really ultra clear in your communications, no matter who they are, because you might think you have crafted a perfect email or a perfect script, especially in that kind of crisis situation. And you've got to be really careful about the words that you choose and being mindful and having that self-awareness of what you're attempting to communicate. Because as I say in my office, there's no such thing as reality, there's only perceptions of it.
Yeah.
I don't really give a shit what you think. It's really more important about what the other person is thinking.
Yep.
And so I carry one of the $100 bill. She gave me $2,000. She was like, you need to have this in your pocket. Like, just, I'm like,
keep that $100 bill in your
and so I
pocket.
spent $1,900, I kept the one. It's right here, come take it.
That's awesome.
No, I'm good.
Eric, do you have anything in closing you want to leave people with? But by the way, this is awesome, right? Yeah.
The only thing I'd say is I made 60 lessons learned and narrowed it down to 10. I can get that to Gary or part of the thing if anyone's interested.
It's a
They can
great
grab
list.
that list.
He shared it with me. It's an awesome list.
So,
Yeah, maybe you come on the cyber call and then we'll give it to everybody. How's that sound?
sure, happy to.
Awesome. So I want to close with this, and I'll give it in two ways. Me to my customers who are MSPs, I ask this question, and I ask them to ask the same question to their customers, because we're trying so hard to push people forward. And sometimes I say, I feel like I care more about your risk and your cybersecurity than you do. Why is that? And that is the question that you have to ask your customers. Why do I care more about your risk and your cybersecurity than you do? Remember, if they're not taking your recommendations, it is not them, it's us. We have to get better, because if they understood, too bad all of your customers and prospects couldn't be here for these 2 days. Because if they were here for these 2 days, they wouldn't care what you charge them per month. It's our job to take all of this and in a clean, effective way, using standards, in plain language, be able to communicate that so they're willing to make the investments that we can do the things that we need to do, right? Awesome. All right, Wes, we're good.
Fantastic. So it is 1:30. Yeah, let's give another round of applause.